All right, now that's what we call a warm Texas welcome. How are you doing today?
Fine. I have to tell you what great fun it's been meeting all of you. I'm overwhelmed by the affection and for the Phantasm movies and for myself. And it's just been a joy meeting not only every Texan in the vicinity, but from Oklahoma and Tennessee and Kansas and Nebraska and Ohio and all over who have come to this great convention. My regret is that in the line, I have only about a minute or a minute and a half to talk to each of you because everybody has such a fascinating story. I love it. I wish we all had at least 10 minutes. So when I'm away from the table, if you see me wandering, tottering around looking through the hallways or having lunch or something, don't hesitate to come up and we'll chat a bit more. It's just been absolutely great. I thank you.
Now, yesterday, Angus and I met, and I asked him, just as some of you may or may not have done, to see if he still got the angry face and I can't even do it in front of a mic in front of all of you, but the good boy. You got to see this. Ready?
Well, this is inevitable. Boy.
All right, I figured we had to go ahead and get that one out of the way. Now, everybody knows you as the tall man, and you know we love these movies. But there's a couple of really interesting things. How many of you guys know that Angus won a Grammy? Good, a few of them. Yeah, for writing liner. You've written liner notes for the Beatles and Frank Sinatra, right?
That's right. Yes, writing liner notes helped pay the bills for a good 30 years. I did that. I think I started around 58, long before any of you were born, for Capitol Records. You've seen photos of the big Capitol Tower, Hollywood and Vine, the round building. I actually worked on the 6th floor of that building for about 9 years, actually, way back in the 60s. And they had Nat Cole, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Judy Garland, Ella Fitzgerald, Liza Minnelli. The Beatles came in, Al Martino. Oh, the list just went on and on. A great country roster, a great roster of jazz artists, and it was fascinating to be there. I enjoyed every moment of it, and I must have written 1,000 liner notes in the whole 30 years. So that's one of the great experiences of my life, and simultaneously I would do plays at night, so I kept my hand in acting also.
And I'm going to open the floor up to questions in just a second. But one more thing I wanted to ask you, because I know you've done many things outside of this. Have you ever done Shakespeare?
Well, could you hold these for me? Of course. I'm asked that often, I think probably because the tall man whom Don created is such a strong theatrical presence that there is something a little Shakespearean about him. But no, I've never been asked to do Shakespeare. I did study with the great Frank Baxter. Does anybody know that name? Baxter was a teacher at USC who taught a Shakespeare class, and one of his other students became a television producer, and persuaded Baxter to do a half-hour show every Sunday at 3 on Shakespeare. And it was a sensation back in around the 1950s, I think it was. And he won like an Emmy every year for about 3 years in a row for that show. So I did study some Shakespeare. But, I thought I would audition a little for you if I could. Just try out a few of the famous lines, since everybody wants to know if I could do it. Hark, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Oh, No, sorry. That's the big Burger King neon sign. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take up arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. Not to worry, let's leave all that to Obama. Or even better, Rick Perry. Is that a dagger that I see before me? Handle toward my hand. Come, let me clutch thee. No? Well, how about just a little feel? A horse, my kingdom for a horse. Well, what the hell? There's got to be a horse somewhere. This is Texas. No, as I said, I've never been asked to do Shakespeare.
All right. I love your version of Shakespeare, actually. All right, let's open the floor to some questions. Now, if you don't mind, since we have one mic, if you could project as best you can.
Will there be a Phantasm 5?
Will there be a Phantasm 5?
You know, I'm so glad Don Coscarelli is here because he's the one you have to ask about that. If there were to be, I would have, it's always mum's the word. I don't know, Don has always been so creative about his work, and I don't really know quite what he has in mind about that. I've always said that I love the phantasms as they exist. I think they're a complete unit, and I just assume there never would be a Phantasm 5. But who knows? Right now, he's working on, he's wrapping up post-production on John Dies at the End. And I will be in an unbilled cameo in that. A very funny bit, I think. I think it's going to be have any of you read the novel? Do any of you know John Dies at the End? It's about two young college kids who get a hold of a brand new drug and try it, and it just causes all kinds of mayhem in their lives. It should be strikingly funny. There are many great special effects. He has two handsome young new actors. Chase Williamson is one, I've forgotten the name of the other, playing the leads. I think they're going to be big stars. And he has a strong supporting role played by the great Paul Giamatti. So I think it's going to be a heck of a good motion picture, but we'll have to ask Don about that too.
All right, and right in the front, sir.
I know everybody has their own preferences on their favorite Phantasm movies. I was wondering, of the ones, what was your choice as your absolute favorite going away?
Do you know, honestly, whichever one I've seen most recently, I'm not at all embarrassed to say that I love all four of them. I really do. Obviously, the first is the classic and set sort of the feeling and the tempo and the characters, and so I guess that would have to be, most people consider that the greatest. The second had the biggest budget and had wonderful things going on in it, and I love that too. We missed Michael Baldwin, of course. James LeGros was excellent in it, and James has gone on to have a brilliant career as mostly in independent features. He has a new movie out, by the way, which I want to highly recommend. It's called Bitter Feast. Have any of you seen Bitter Feast yet? James plays a chef who is top chef at a leading restaurant and also has a cooking show on television. And one of the critics in New York writes a real put down of him. And immediately his TV show is canceled, and his boss at the restaurant fires him. So he kidnaps the critic, takes him off to an isolated cabin in the woods, and makes him cook. Makes him make the perfect egg. And if the guy doesn't do it well, then he gets tortured. It's a fascinating movie. I recommend that one. What was the question?
Just your absolute favorite of all the favorites.
Yes. Well, then, 3 I love because Reggie's so wonderful in that one. I love the comedy. A lot of people don't like the comedy. They think it sort of detracts from the tone of the series, but I love that, and I thought many of the new actors in that were added so much to it. And then 4 gets kind of back to the feeling of the first one, and it has more of that eerie quality of the first film. And I like the fact that we get to see Jebediah in that too. I always enjoy playing 2 parts. The ham in me comes out. Well, it always does anyway. So I can't. 3, I think, has some of the tall man's best scenes. Those are all my comments. I can't really. We'll say the first one.
All right, great. With the Freddy Krueger gloves.
How did you get into the acting business?
How did you get into the acting business?
Well, when I was a baby, my mother used to take me to the old silent movies and sit there in the darkness and nurse me. And I think things began to gel in my mind right then. Associating what was going on the screen and acting with getting fed. Then when talkies came in, I idolized a cowboy actor named Richard Dix, and I thought Gary Cooper was wonderful. And I just thought, oh, I want to be up there with them. I want to be up there doing that too. So finally, when I was a young adult, I came to California and majored in theater at the University of Southern California under a great old man named William C. DeMille. He was the older brother of Cecil B. DeMille. Is that name familiar to you? In fact, I just saw Cecil's last big movie, the 10 Commandments, was on Easter. It's on every Easter. And the style of acting reminded me of William C. DeMille's style of acting. Very stentorian, every word emphasized throughout the dialogue. And William was an old school man too, in a way. He had acted on the Broadway stage, he had written plays, and he directed silence, and he directed early talkies. One of his big hits was something called Miss Lulu Betts. And then Hollywood kicked him out because he was married to a very famous American's daughter. It wasn't William James, it might have been the philosopher William James' daughter. And she was the belle of Hollywood. Everyone was so thrilled to have her in Hollywood. And he left her for a gorgeous lady screenwriter that he worked with. He just fell so madly in love that he left his wife, and Hollywood just shunned him. So he got a job as the head of the theater department at USC, and I was lucky enough to work with him. He was a marvelous old man who taught very traditional Broadway acting, which may account for, I think, incidentally, we had a Q&A contest, and one of the questions from a lady named Lori was, did working with DeMille influence Tall Man in any way? And I think I've just answered that question. I think William's style was sort of larger than life, and I think so some of that is a rub-off from his technique. So, Laurie, you get Parrish Randall's website. We had a contest for the best 3 questions written in, and Laurie's was one. So the prize was to be a copy of the first Phantasm on Anchor Bay, which I would sign to hers. So, is Laurie here? Would you like to come get your?
There we go. Actually, I bet we're in a room full of pens, full of markers. Hey, look at that. There it is.
Thank you.
All right. And how about these great stories? This is really an honor to have you here because you have a connection to a almost lost time in Hollywood. And at 84, we are so very happy to have you here. So, yeah. All right, we're going to open it up here in just a second here. Now, I know that some people were looking forward to Phantasm 2 that took quite a while to come onto DVD, but I guess you guys all have that one now? The missing piece of the collection? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and there's I have a prop. There is something that you don't get to ask someone every day, and that I would like to ask you. What is it like to have your own action figure?
I don't think they're making them anymore, so I can be honest. I love the action figure because it looks so much like one of my all-time great idols, the great Don Coscarelli. I don't see much of me in it. But it's of course a great honor to. Is that a NECA?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, anyway, yes, of course. I was very pleased, very pleased. And I see Don is still selling a few of them at his table.
All right, let's go right in the back there.
Yeah, I watched the Australian promotion. We went to Australia to promote Phantasm, and it's called Never Dead. Why was it called Never Dead, not Phantasm?
Because about a year or two before Phantasm was released, there was a very successful porn movie in Australia called Phantasm. So they had to change the name in Australia.
All right, and you, sir, right there.
I saw on YouTube you sing a song called Prairie Dog. Where did that come from? Can you sing it again?
He's asking about the song Prairie Dog.
Oh, yes. Well, have any of you seen a movie out of Glass Eye Pictures in New York called The Off Season? Anyone?
No.
A little ghost movie that I made there about 2003. Somebody somewhere saw it. Thank you. I played, it's a story about a haunted room in a motel, and a New York writer and his wife go to this motel to get away so that he can finish his novel. And they find that the room is haunted by terrible things that have happened there in the past. Moreover, their room is right next to the room occupied by an old rodeo bronc buster, a rodeo rider, who has come to Maine to retire. It was all filmed at Old Orchard Beach in Maine. And he keeps them awake at night. He can't sleep, so he gets out his guitar and he sings old Western songs all night long. So they said, we don't have a very big budget. We can't use an established song. You'll have to sing something that's in the public domain. And so I said, well, why don't I write something? So I wrote a song called the Prairie Dog Song. And you really? Are you? This ain't gonna be the American Idol, I promise you. Maybe one of the early auditions for the American Idol. One of the first rejects. All right, if you have the patience to sit through it, I will gladly do it. It gets mighty lonesome on the prairie. Letters from the folks back home are few. When I get to thinking of my little gal Mary, I kisses me a prairie dog or two. Prairie dogs, them cute little prairie dogs. I kisses me a prairie dog or two. The howling of the wolves is mighty eerie. Their baying at the moon can make you blue. Sets me to thinking of my little gal Mary. So it kisses me a prairie dog or two. Prairie dogs, them cute little prairie dogs. Kisses me a prairie dog or two. Now Mary don't like living on the prairie. It's true that conveniences are few. So she's with her folks in Tucumcari, and I make do with a prairie dog or two. Prairie dogs, them cute little prairie dogs. I make do with a prairie dog or two. Now prairie dogs can be quite contrary, and kissing me ain't their favorite thing to do. But when I get lonesome for my little gal Mary, I kisses me a prairie dog or two. Prairie dogs, them cute little prairie dogs. I kisses me a prairie dog or two. And sometimes 3 or 4 if I can catch the little dickies.
Wow, what a treat, huh? That's great. All right, and with the knife in the head. Don't often say that at Q&A.
I'm wondering, how old were you in Phantasm in real life when you were the tall man?
How old were you in real life in Phantasm when you were the tall man?
Oh, good Lord, let's see, that was shot, it was released, when was it released? 1979, wasn't it? The first Phantasm, and we shot it around 77, 78. Oh, I can't add up. I don't know how far back is it? I'm 84 now. Whatever it was minus all those years, I must have been in my 50s, I would think. So about 52 maybe? Something like that. And I will be 85 next August.
Okay, right here in the second.
You guys shot an amazing amount of film for the first Phantasm, a lot of extra footage and things ended up in the subsequent films, and I guess you guys were dealing, I mean, number one with a young director who was going and filming on weekends and doing what he could do to get the best footage he could get. What was it like as an experienced actor working for a young Don Coscarelli? What was that relationship like? How did you meet him, et cetera, et cetera?
For those in the back, he's asking about what it was like to work with a young Don Coscarelli.
I first met Don about 1972. I had worked at Capitol Records on staff for nine or 10 years when the Beatles came in, and then they were great at top stars, all the ones I named a moment ago. Just terrific at turning out great vocal albums. And of course, the Beatles were created themselves in Britain, and suddenly rock music just took over the whole business. And the producers at Capitol, wonderful men and doing big band and vocal, had no idea what to do. So the company sort of went on the skids, and they let a lot of people go, including me. But they kept me writing album notes from home. So it freed me to get back into movie acting, and I was lucky enough. I had moonlighted working on a magazine called Cinema, which was a cinema arts magazine, the editorship of which was taken over by a young man named Curtis Hanson. Curtis went on after that, he was only 20-something, he went on to become the famous director of LA Confidential, which won him a writing Oscar and nominations for directing and Best Picture. And where am I going here? I'm lost. Oh yes, Don. Let's get back to Don and away from me. Okay. But anyway, I saw a 1-inch ad. I needed an acting. I saw a 1-inch ad in the Hollywood Reporter for a casting session at the Century Plaza Hotel, which is a great address. So I thought, well, this might be something good. And I went out to the hotel, was ushered into a big room with a long table with 2 teenage boys sitting behind it. And I chatted with them a bit. They asked me would I come down to Long Beach to do a video test. And I went and was cast in, there was a young actor I had to read with named Gregory Harrison, who was already playing the lead in a picture called Jim the World's Greatest, ultimately it was titled. And I was cast as his alcoholic father. So Don and I worked on that one. That actually was co-written by a man named Craig Mitchell, who was his high school buddy, and co-directed by Craig. And they were feeling their way, but Don has always had a very secure feeling about movies and knowing exactly what he wants. Don would, Craig would come up and, after a take and say, you know, that was pretty good, but could you give it just a little more this time? We're going to retake it. Give it just a little more. And he'd stroll off, and Don would amble up in his friendly way and say, that was nice, but we're going to do it again, and maybe just a little bit less this time. So I would just let the character do what it wanted to do on the next take, and they would both find a way to come up to me and say, yeah, that's going to work. So that I worked with him. Anyway, then Don went on to do a picture called QnA Company for 20th Century Fox. And then one night I was at the Writers Guild at a screening, and the senior Coscarellis came in, Don's mother and father, and sat behind me and said, you know, Don's got a 3rd picture in the works. He's written a script, and there's a great part for you. You're going to play an alien. And I said, I thought, oh, that's great. Some European immigrant just coming over who's through Ellis Island and struggling to make a go of it in America. What a great opportunity for drama. Well, of course, I read the script. It was an entirely different kind of alien, which didn't faze me at all. I was delighted. And the script, as you probably all know by now, had lots more in it than wound up on the screen. There was a whole first third of the movie was about the 2 boys and their girlfriends and working in the bank, which had been the family bank, and having a big fight in an ice cream parlor and all kinds of funny things going on, which Don ultimately eliminated and trimmed the film down to the Phantasm as you know it today. But it was, working with Don has always been a joy. He's laid back, he's amiable, he's knowledgeable. I remember after the screening of The Masters of Horror, incident on and off on Mountain Road back in 2003, I think it was, I went up to Don's father afterward and I said, your son really knows how to make a movie. And Don Sr. said, he's always known. And so he has.
All right, right here in the back.
After playing the tall man in essentially all the Phantasm films and developing that character, when it got to the point where it got to the Jebediah character and you see the backstory behind this menacing evil being, how did you approach that? Because it's very diverse acting. Like, how was that taught up? How was it talked up? Was it you, the director? Or how did it come about, and how did you feel about that storyline? Just after playing this character so many times, and then they're going to show the backstory. What were your personal thoughts of it?
For those in the back, he's asking about the Jebediah character that he has to go back on after so many years of playing the tall man.
Well, the Hammond likes nothing better than playing a dual role. And I thought the Jebediah character was an interesting idea. And I thought it worked out very well in the end. He was fun to play. And as for how I do it, my technique is just to thoroughly familiarize myself with the script. Study it, read it. Memorizing lines is pretty much when the character develops. And I don't know that I develop it. I think the character takes me over. And once I know the lines thoroughly and I've thoroughly thought about the situation and the motivations, then I just relax and let the character play himself. So, and of course the tall man. The tall man I had done 3 times previously, and he just re-enters me quite casually and quite easily.
All right, great. And so in the third row.
Of all these scenes in the Phantasm series, which one caused you to be subjected to the most physical discomfort, or was most difficult to film?
He's asking about, in all these scenes, filming, which one caused you the most physical discomfort to film?
In all 4 movies, or did
Yes.
you say Phantasm 3?
All of them, the whole series.
Well, I think getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, going straight to Mark Sjostrom's makeup chair, and sitting there while he made me up for the scene where, is it Paula or Reggie who plunges the embalming needle into the back of the tall man's neck in that scene? And they pump embalming fluid into him, or they pump one of the acids into him, and his whole face explodes, his eye pops out. To make me up for that, they used all kinds of different manufactured makeups, things made out of melted butter and mustard, and every day they would go buy a chicken and skin it, and apply raw chicken skin to my face. And all the while, I would sit there in the makeup chair for 4 hours undergoing this, and all the while, Mark Sjostrom would be humming maniacally. That was the hardest.
That's physical discomfort for sure. Okay, right back there, sir, in the black jacket, red shirt.
I've read in interviews that you said you dread the possibility of Phantasm 5 because you'll have to grow your hair long again. Have you ever considered, either for that or any of the movies, just wearing a wig for his hair?
For those of you in the back, he's asking, you dreaded wanting to make a Phantasm 5 because you have to grow your hair out, but would you consider wearing the wig for that?
I've not had the best luck in the world with wigs. You saw the scene from Subspecies.
All right, great. And let's go right in the middle, sir, in the white shirt. What's your next film?
Well, John Dies at the end would be one of my next films. I play a guest role in one episode of a brand new series on Cinemax, one of those late night, rather naughty series. It's called, it debuts next month, I think, in May. Well, this is almost May, isn't it? It's called Femme Fatale. And in this episode, I play a doctor. And there was one scene where I had with a young leading man and a young leading lady. We all rehearsed in our street clothes before we went to wardrobe. In the lab scene, it was a lab scene where I had to make my entrance and confront them. And so we rehearsed, and then I went off to makeup and wardrobe. And they said, oh, Mr. Scrimm, we're doing a take. So I came out and waited for my cue. I heard my cue. I go in, the leading man, and the leading lady is starker. She is completely naked. Nobody had told me. I'm enough of an old hand that I breezed through it, but that was a first for me.
That's great. Now we have time for a couple more questions.
Oh, that's right, yes.
Yeah, we're going to give away a couple more of the DVDs first. We have the questions. But in the meantime, who's got a really, really good one before we close up? Third row back there.
What do you prefer, theater or film?
What do you prefer, theater or film?
I loved all the things I did in theater. I never did Broadway. I did things in California always. And this century, I really have only done two. I did the old Butler Fears in Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard for John Blankenship at the Court Theater in West Hollywood. And then a year or two later, Ray Bradbury has a theater of his own where they do nothing but Ray Bradbury plays. And he adapts his short stories, he adapts his novels. And he adapted a terrific novel he wrote about old Hollywood called Let's All Kill Constance. And I played two roles in that. I played one of Constance's first husband, who was a 70-year-old man who had been a train conductor. And then I played a very fey, epicene old 99-year-old who had been her drama coach and mentor. And Ray always comes to rehearsals. He's there for 2 rehearsals a week at least, and he always comes to opening night. And the director had given the old 99-year-old some marvelous business. I remember one scene where the leading man was talking to him, and he had me just put my head back, take a big pocket handkerchief, and put the handkerchief over my face and start to snore while the leading man was talking, and the audience just broke up. And Ray broke up. I could hear him giggling in the front row. And the next morning he called and said, Angus, I think I love you. But it was Alan Hubbs, the director's genius, that made that role so good. I love theater, but the reason I like film, I think, is that it's one's immortality. You know, you can hope that it will go on for years after you're no longer around. So, and it's fun to be able to sit and watch yourself, too. Sometimes it's horrible. I've seen 2 or 3 of my performances that I hope nobody ever sees, but usually I guess the answer would be film.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get these away, and then we're going to do one last question. So whoever's got a really good one, does anyone have a really good one you want to close this out with? Okay.
The chick with the big bazongas in Phantasm, where is she now, and were they real? think I know what he means by bazongas. I think you, Josh Vargas. Is Josh Vargas here? No? Well, I'll answer the question anyway. Kathy Lester, probably he means, don't you think, at the beginning of Phantasm? Kathy tells a story about that. She was a shy young girl and not aware that she was going to have to disrobe. So when it came time to shoot the scene with Bill Thornbury, she said, no way, no way. So they quickly called in one of the girls on the crew who had fewer reservations, and she subbed for Kathy in that scene. But Kathy said, you know, I couldn't do that and tell my mother. I just couldn't do that, and my mother would have been terribly shocked. Then, when they had the premiere or the preview, Kathy brought her mother to see the film, and her mother said, Kathy, darling, why didn't you do that? You have much nicer ones than she.
All right, and there's one more question? No?
Oh, right. Another question.
I think there's one more for the giveaway, and then we'll close this out.
Is there a Rick Staton here? My goodness, I'm going home with some of my DVDs. Well, what is it like killing those peeps on screen? I don't remember any chickens. Well, you know, it's fun. I love playing comedy because the roars of laughter, when you see yourself, or you're on stage especially, and you hear the audience just roll with laughter, or when you're sitting in a movie house, and I love also, I learn to love hearing people scream when you do scary things. I'm happy though to say that the tall man doesn't kill many peeps. He always has his henchmen do that, usually. So he doesn't usually dirty his hands. And, I haven't had that experience to date.
All right, so we've got time for one final question. Who's got the good one? All right, the tattooed sleeves. How did you come up with your stage name, is the question?
I honestly don't know. I thought, I've always told the story that William DeMille, whom I mentioned before, did not like his actors to work off campus. He wanted to concentrate on his method and do his plays on campus. So unless they got a brilliant job of working a Broadway show or something, he preferred that they not work off campus. And I had a little theater I often worked at called the Call Board, and I knew I'd be working there. So I decided to come up with another name, and sitting in their auditions one day, I think I wrote down Angus Scrimm. But oddly enough, years later, I found I had written that same name in a journal I kept around 1944, back when I was going to become a writer and was trying to think of good, interesting names to use for characters. So that name must have been circulating in my mind for much longer than I thought. And when we decided to do Phantasm, all my first pictures were done under Lawrence Guy or Rory Guy, which are my real names. Lawrence Rory Guy is my full name. When we decided to do Phantasm, I thought, I really don't want Guy, in case this film's a big success, I don't want Guy to become synonymous with Karloff and Lugosi, and all the guys in the world suddenly find themselves laughed at or shunned. So I thought, Angus Scrimm, of course, I will be Angus Scrimm for just this one picture. And then, of course, it was such a big success that I've been stuck with Angus Scrimm ever since.
All right. We're so happy to have you here. I don't know how many of you go to many of these conventions, but it's not often that you get to see the great Angus Scrimm, and so I'm very, very happy to see a full house standing room only. So let's have a huge, huge round of applause right to Mr. Angus Scrimm.